So I had slides prepared, but I think we're going to just jump straight into the conversation. So we've got an awesome crew set up today, this morning, from a variety of different perspectives on the legal industry. And so the purpose of the panel, I think, is to sort of set the stage. Where exactly do we find ourselves? And I think in talking to everyone on this panel, everybody said, well, we don't want to waste any time talking about whether or not technology will change something. We don't want to waste any time talking about whether or not disruption is here. You know, even Susskind's first book, The End of Lawyers, ends with a question mark. But what we really want to talk about is, given that it is here, what do we build next? And so, as mentioned in the very beginning, I want to keep this fairly free-flowing. So if you have a question or comment that comes to mind, feel free to step up to one of those two mics. But I think we want to begin, talking about sort of industry structure, right? So Charlie just talked a lot about price, and I want to get your guys' reaction on that. Is that the relevant factor here?
Well, I think
and Eddie, you should introduce yourself first.
Sorry, Eddie Hartman, LegalZoom. I want to start off by saying I hope we're not fracking. I think that Charlie's last comment there is that the impact of this industry and this revolution. I agree with Charlie. This is not a disruption. This is a revolution. This is a replacement of the old with the new. But hopefully we're not talking about horrifying environmental damage as a result. Hopefully we're talking about a net public boon, as opposed to something they have to make movies saying, please don't do this.
Right, and what do you see as that boon, actually? Do you think, what do you think will result as a result of these changes in the market, right? Because I know we talked a little bit about consolidation.
Sure. Well, gosh, everybody in this room knew not to go to the future of legal education, but to come here instead, despite the signs outside. So everybody knows this is about democratizing law in general. Not just the creation of lawyers, but how people who currently cannot get access to the legal help they need will get that help in the future. And I agree, it's technology, but I think we need to be more specific than that. Everybody in this room knows it's technology.
Right. So Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Let me talk about pricing a little bit.
Yeah, because you've been at this for a long time, and you should tell people about what you do.
We started a online legal research service in
You sort of have to lean into the mic.
Excuse
Sorry.
me. We started an online legal research service called JuraSearch back in 1997. It was the first internet-based legal research service. We started here in California with California database only. Is it working?
Yep.
Okay, great. And have gradually expanded across the country. We now serve we have a 50-state and complete federal library. We have a shepherdizing function, and we deliver it either at a flat rate of approximately $40 to $50 a month per attorney, or if you're a member of 24 state bar associations or happen to be a member of the Santa Clara Bar Association, you get the service for free as part of your bar membership. So what we did in our pricing, we put together a list of the services that we were providing. We were providing court rules, a whole variety of things that at that particular point in time you had to buy separately. And the total cost of what you were going to buy from Lexis, West, and all the other vendors would have been $400 or $500 a month, which was a lot of money for solo practitioners. That was our primary market. So we took the principle that you either provide comparable service at an order of magnitude less cost, or you provide an order of magnitude better service at the same cost. We took the order of magnitude less cost, combined the services, said, okay, this is $400 or $500 a month. We're going to charge $40 a month.
Right. So what I hear you saying is that you think the technology is going to support solo practitioners.
Absolutely.
That's the result.
Well, what I'm saying is that if you take a look at delivering a service, pretty much that Eddie and LegalZoom do, is I'd have to go to an attorney and pay $800 for a will. Now I can go to LegalZoom and get the same will for $40. And then ultimately, I think I'm going to be able to fill out the form to get the will and then have a consult with an attorney for a half an hour for maybe $50 or $75, so I can get the same service that I first paid $800 for that maybe cost me $120.
Right.
That's kind of where I see things happening, and as a result, the market increases exponentially.
Right, and Richard, so you're on the front lines of price here. I mean, is that kind of what you see, right? That the market's really broadening for, solo practitioners, small practitioners. And you should introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Can you hear me? All right, so thank you, Tim. I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm so glad that, you guys are holding events like this. My name is Richard Kamaiko. I'm the co-founder of AttorneyFee.com. We built our company on pricing transparency. To say that we're the front lines of pricing is like not quite accurate. We're like the battle wounded in the medical tent. Right now we have pricing schedules, very, very detailed, granular pricing schedules from about 90,000 attorneys across the country. And we're still trying to figure out the best way to build a scalable business on that. But we do a lot of cool stuff with the data. And the most common pushback we get is, you can't compare apples to oranges. And even when we show statistically that we can, attorneys aren't very happy with that. So I think, for us, the direction is moving from talking about legal costs to legal value. I think that's a really important point. The LegalZooms of the world, I think that they can actually approach a Six Sigma type of service because, that's how the offering is structured. But for service providers, traditional solos and small firms, we have to define legal value. I think that's the forefront.
So it's a metrics thing. So
yeah, I want to actually just not exactly challenge, but comment on something that Richard just said.
Sure.
Attorneys aren't happy with price transparency. The attorney fee, correct me if I'm wrong, has actually been savaged on legal blogs for simply revealing what attorneys charge.
Is that true?
Yeah, but just to add to that, no one's saying we're wrong about our statement of their fees.
They just don't like you saying it.
They just don't like us saying it.
Can anyone name an industry where there's actually an attack on a person trying to just say what the price is? I mean, let's start there. Obviously we want to get to value and democratization of law, but I mean, imagine a situation where the industry is so entrenched that prices aren't even known.
Eddie, can I tell you, before we launched, we had 3 threatened lawsuits just because of the name of the site. We've had attorneys who have claimed that we're defaming them by accurately stating their fees.
So, Josh, I want to bring you in right now because I think you're
Thanks
sort of,
a lot, Tim.
You're sort of the big bad on this panel. You're the guy in the suit. You're at a big law firm.
Right, I am bad.
Who's
bad?
Right, and I think that's important. I really want to hear your perspective on this, right? Because I think we've heard a lot about small practitioners.
That's right. I think I'm the only law firm talking today, which is interesting. Now, it's interesting because I'm the oddest representative of big law you could possibly imagine ever. When we started CodeX, what was it, like 10 years ago?
Well, you should introduce yourself.
My name's Josh Walker. We founded CodeX about 10 years ago. Roll into the back, Mike Genezareth, 2 of Mike's PhDs, and Mark Lemley. And then after that, I got recruited to run something called the IPLC, which Mark started. And then, sorry for the long-winded story, but it goes back to the question. In the Packard Cafe, we co-founded a company called Lex Machina, which the law firm incredibly let us do. Thank you again, Stanford Law School, and now it's going great. So, I'm a really odd representative of big law, but I think it's, brought into Simpson Thatcher really to help them use data and new technology better. And while when we started CodeX, it was all about law for people, situated law, things we can do to help regular people, the real representatives of that are Rocket Lawyer and LegalZoom, right? And they've done that, and they've done it partly through people, but it's technologically enabled business models that have really changed the game, operations research.
Right.
And I'm at the opposite end of this. So we're doing, mega $24 billion deals, and my goal is to create massive value for my clients. Really, help them in a way that they've never been helped before. So it's opening a completely different door, using technology. And some examples of that are, I may look at dozens of different data sources and putting a deal together or helping people craft something. And instead of just looking at the precedents of what people are doing in the past, I'm looking at what's been successful and what's failed. And these people have enormous stakes, and in a similar way, they have some of the same problems that regular people do, right? Even if they're very sophisticated, huge, banks and
corporations are people too.
I won't go there. Robots are people too.
Right,
Ryan
right.
Kalo.
But I mean, so you're talking a lot about sort of back office technologies, right? Like things the law firms are using. Do you find in big law that there's fear about price transparency or about value transparency?
I've never encountered it at my firm, but again, we may be very atypical.
For what it's worth, we've actually gotten really warm reception from Big Law.
Really? Okay,
Yeah,
so
a
tell
lot
us
of
a
Big
little bit
Law
about that.
has solicited us to come into that market.
Why do you think?
Why? Because they're centralized buyers in Big Law. GCs love us.
Cool. Eddie, looks like you have something to say.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to talk to the importance of what he was saying.
Sure. Shoot.
There was an example of Southwest earlier, and the reason Southwest decided to price lower was because they understood they were competing with people who wanted to drive between those three big Texas cities, Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio. In this business, there really isn't that alternative, right? There's first-class flight or the pro se route, which is like a moped, right? Like trying to bicycle your Schwinn. So I think what we're seeing now is the introduction of light rail, better alternatives. And that naturally will have a downward pricing effect and hopefully lead to that democratization that we're all hoping we'll achieve. And I think, but not if prices aren't made transparent to the consumer.
Can I speak to that?
Sure, yeah, shoot.
So LegalZoom and Attorney Fee actually partnered with the Brookings Institution on a study that hasn't been released yet, but it's going to be, I think it's like American Journal of Econometrics or something like that, where we regressed LegalZoom market penetration data against average prices for comparable attorney-provided services. And suffice it to say, there is hard scientific proof coming out very soon that these alternatives actually do have an impact on pricing and availability.
Let me just address that anecdotally. I still practice law. I've been practicing for 35 years, and I talk to other attorneys all the time. LegalZoom has virtually destroyed the small firm estate planning practice, at least in Southern California. The general practitioner used to do wills, trusts, estates, personal injury work. The whole thing has just acceded to LegalZoom in terms of the wills and trusts aspect of the business. So there's been a huge drop in that level of business, at least in Southern California. And it's LegalZoom. I don't know Rocket Lawyer, but I know LegalZoom has been primarily responsible for that. So there's been a real market disruption here. In our situation, both Lexis and West have not been growing for the last 4, 5, 6 years. And the reason is, is that we operate as a cap on the prices they can charge, and we operate in the market where they're trying to expand, but they can't expand because they cannibalize their business. So that's kind of what's happening now. And if we can lower the costs to the attorney and to the service provider, then you can ultimately lower the cost to the consumer as well. That's it.
I've had a very personal experience with people being unable to afford attorneys. I watched actually early on in LegalZoom when I still thought of law as any other business. I watched a woman who is sort of a test subject for us, who was suffering stage 3 stomach cancer and had kids and had been left by her husband and couldn't afford an attorney. Thought she was going to die without proper legal coverage. And that was a major moment for me in understanding we were doing something very different as a profession than just selling groceries or pet food. So I think it's very important. What we're trying to do here, and I think all of us really, is provide more law to more people. The prices right now are wrong if you just look at it in terms of how many people can afford it. And LegalZoom certainly does not want to destroy firms. What we prefer to see, though, is a rational pricing that makes sense to people. And I think we'll see that. I think, economics just naturally will find people who can provide that kind of value. But I think in order to do so, they're going to have to invest in the right kind of technology, in the right kind of, just as you were saying, the right sort of infrastructure, the right sort of approach to the market.
Right. Okay, so Richard, and then I think this is a natural point. Are we hearing any questions or comments out there that people would want to bring up on this? We can also just carry on, too. We'll just carry on. Go ahead.
So just to follow on what Eddie said about rational pricing, I don't want to steal too much thunder from Brookings, but I think everyone who will really care about that study is actually sitting in this room today, so what the hell. In addition to the statistically significant impact of LegalZoom market penetration on average market clearing price, the most amazing outcome came out of this study, which I think you'll all be fascinated to hear. one of the things Brookings was looking for was, what is the primary driver? What is the primary independent variable that controls for price? And we included every independent variable you could possibly imagine about the providers of the service. Their gender, where they went to school, where they're located, granularly, what zip code, how many people are in their firm, yada, yada, everything you could possibly imagine. As it turned out, location accounted for 10% of perceived variation. Years of experience accounted for 40% of perceived variation. Would anyone like to guess what accounted for the other 50% of variation? Yes. Good question, or good theory.
So it was student debt, just for everyone who is on the other side of the room.
Any other ideas? Sorry? Boom. Brookings called me after they got all the data and said, there's got to be something we did wrong, an error, some independent variable you're not providing us with, because there is no perceived correlation between any other independent variable and price. Absolutely not. And we reran it, and reran it, and reran it. It's random, which is a fancy way of saying irrational pricing or price discrimination.
So doesn't this, I mean, so it undermines the idea of like fancy first-class services and like the bicycle, right?
I'm sure there are first-class services out there, and that's why I said I think the next step for us is defining legal value and not just legal cost. But yeah, there are a lot of bicycle drivers out there pretending to be, you know, at least rickshaws.
So let's get more concrete about value, actually. Do you want to talk about sort of the things you're thinking about there in terms of measurement? Like, what do you mean exactly when you say, let's move from price to value? Because I have kind of a blurry idea of what that would look like, but.
I think we all do. That's why we're here.
Sure.
You know? Actually, I have my thoughts, but I'd like to punt to my co-panelists.
Josh, you have something to say?
So my co-panelist raised a really interesting question. How do you value this? And I would frame this question for maybe the next Brookings study. What's the ROI on each dollar of value I spend? And how do you measure that, right? So it's a very genteel kind of medieval guild system. You know, how do you track these things? How do you determine legal value? And if you're talking about comps, how do you compare a small plaintiff's law firm in Texas or a big one, right? Let's take, you know, Sussman Godfrey and compare it to a small law firm in Silicon Valley or Berkeley. It's really hard. So you have to run some very complex analysis to figure out what are the comparable companies and the comparable entities. For the will scenario and the medical scenario, it's I'm going to die, I will not have any service. That's my competition, or I can get something that's going to save me, right? For firms that are competing, they're bidding, but there's no price value information that's really going to those bids. People have an impression using their gut. They know who they know. They have relationships which are self-sustaining, right? And these are really important behavioral economics issues to be thinking about. But I want to track value. So,
great.
Let me just jump in here real quick.
And then we'll take Eddie, and then Ron, we'll go to your question.
I think there are a variety of services which are basically commoditized. And you can put them over on kind of the left-hand column and say,
do you want to name names? Like what services do you think are commoditized?
It would be a will or a trust or a non-disclosure agreement or a whole slew of standardized services that you can commoditize and you can price. Then there is who's going to defend me in this personal injury lawsuit, and that's if I'm not covered by insurance, or who's going to defend me in this breach of contract or employment discrimination suit. That is the really hard analytics, or who's going to represent me in this sale of this property to make sure I get it properly tax advantaged. And your different choices of attorneys can cost you hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars depending on their skill and expertise. But that's a different, that's first-class law. And then you have a commoditized type of law that I think you can come up with some rational pricing on. But first-class law comes in with these value-added scenarios. I tell my clients, if I don't make you more money than I cost you, then you need to find another lawyer. That's my approach.
Great. Eddie, you have a comment?
I think, you know, consumers are very interested in two variables. How much is this going to cost? And what is the perceived future benefit? Because You can't perceive the benefit up front. You have to rely on the brand or the perceived quality of the firm, the provider. I used to say that a last will and testament is the ultimate post-purchase good, because if you know how good your will was, you are a vampire. Something is deeply wrong. But really, the consumer looks at a legal product and is not able to ascertain the quality. They know how good the meal was at a restaurant. They know how good the movie was they just saw. They do not know how good a legal document was that they just received. And this industry, I think, owes the consumer more transparency around price, more transparency around value. I don't think the quality metrics out there are up to what the American public deserves.
Great. And I mean, so the law firm brand name, right, is something that's traditionally played that role in the market. So do you feel like the rise of all these value metrics will tend to cause a dispersion of those firms, right? Like lawyers will be known as individual lawyers, not, XYZ big firm did XYZ big deal, and that's why we should go for them.
Well, again, in agreement with the keynote speaker earlier, I think we are in store for a revolution. It's certainly happening in the UK. But the consumer needs two metrics first. They need value and they need quality. They need price and they need quality. If they have those two metrics, they can rationally decide what they want to pay. When a consumer can rationally decide, can rationally make a choice, I think that is setting the field for revolution.
Cool. Ron.
I just want to mention...
Oh, and you should introduce yourself, too.
Oh, sorry. Ron Dolan.
Just this guy.
I don't know what you want me to say about, but it's okay.
Sure.
I study legal technology, and I work with Stanford and CodeX and all that. Let me just get to the issue. There's a study that came out with hospitals. Same issue. The price variability is completely random. And even when you go to transparency, it doesn't tell you who's getting discounted rates. There's no quality metrics. I don't think this is just an issue with law. I think that a lot of sectors thrive on a lack of transparency, private wealth management. Like, there's no metrics available. It's not going to, and I don't know if that's going to happen, and I don't know how we're going to measure quality. But where you have commodity work, for sure, when you know what you're getting is this will at the end of the day, and it's a certain amount, it's like, that's certainly amenable to some form of quality metric and some form of transparency. I'm not sure how we get to full transparency where value is the quality divided by the cost, and the quality is really hard to measure. But
Right. So I think that's the right note. Let's put some pressure on it, right? Because we've been talking about, we got to do this. Well, how do we do it? Rich.
So I completely agree with you. We've thrown a lot of stuff at the wall over the last 6 months trying to define quality and value, and you'd be shocked at what the profession is unwilling to accept as a metric of quality. I'll give you an example that's very near and dear to my heart because I was PMing it in the trademark space. We're really big on data at attorney fees. So we've tried to aggregate what we call outcome data in siloed off practice areas, and some are easier than others. Black and white outcomes like trademarks, Chapter 7 bankruptcies, to a lesser extent patent filings are easier than things like divorce or criminal defense that are very fleshy. So with trademarks, it's really easy. You either got a trademark or you didn't get a trademark, right? Now, you may have gotten this class or that class, but at the end of the day, you got a trademark or you didn't. It's a binary outcome. And there's a certain amount of time it took you to get that trademark, and there's a certain number of office actions that you hit along the way, and you were charged a definite price. I think for a trademark filing, we can all kind of agree there is data to define quality. And if you look at lawyers over the course of a career or a group of lawyers in aggregate, you can say, okay, for this lawyer, his average gestation period between filing for the mark and getting it is so many days. The average number of office actions that he encounters per application is X. His batting average is Y. We actually have that data, and we can then regress it against price. In my opinion, how long it takes you to provide a service, the likelihood of you actually delivering, the number of times you screw up along the way, and what you charge, that is value for that particular service, in my opinion.
So you think it'll be like these analytics will eventually be a patchwork for particular types of tasks? You have particular types of analytics. They won't be like a credit score for lawyer quality. Like one number. Here's
what I can tell you. We are ready to roll in patchwork analytics for probably 70% of legal work, consumer legal work that's out there. And I can also tell you that the profession will not accept that. Attorneys will not accept that. That won't stop us from publishing the data, but attorneys psychologically don't believe that they can be measured based on the outcome of their work. So we're moving toward a model of measuring quality that has attorney buy-in. I think attorney buy-in is absolutely required in order for any sort of metric to carry or hold any water.
Right, and we'll return to that actually, because I'm really interested in what happens when the hammer comes down, or whether or not you're able to persuade people to adopt this.
So, by the way, I have a quick quibble with the use case. In the trademark case, some words are harder to trademark than others, particularly in consumer.
Yep.
So you want the baseball card, but you also want the heuristics. You want to be able to see some video on the players.
Absolutely.
And there are metrics, I totally agree with that, but you also want to take account qualitative factors. So.
There's also class variation and so on and so forth.
Which examiner you got at the USPTO.
Exactly.
So we'll run down the comments that we have waiting. So introduce yourself.
So my name is Amy Wan, and I'm really interested in learning more about the attorney buy-in part of all of this. It seems like, at first glance, they're all very threatened by what you guys might be doing. So my questions are basically, I want to know how you've been able to convince the attorneys that you're working with right now to participate and kind of go beyond that initial fear. And secondly, have you been able to show these attorneys that if they drop their prices, that they will actually make more?
The question is for me?
To
For everybody.
anyone on
I think all you guys have that problem actually. So anyone can fire up.
Yes.
So I take it the question is.
I'll have to say I take issue. Well, not issue, Amy. But, I think that. Okay, so I was on the cover of California Lawyer magazine with the words underneath me and my partners. Are these the guys who are going to put you out of business? So yeah, we definitely feel from lawyers a certain feeling of like threat. I don't see it that way. I really don't. I actually challenge the basis. If law firms were more efficient and did a better job in trying to find out how they can serve the consumer, they would unlock the demand out there that's currently unmet. I mean, the biggest competition that lawyers face today is really not LegalZoom. It's non-consumption. Yep. And if lawyers could address that problem head on, not only would they unlock unbelievable stores of untapped demand, but they would be doing a great public service, because lawyers have a monopoly on the right to practice law, and consumers need that service. So I think lawyers could consider it not merely something good for their bank account, but something good for how they feel about themselves and their profession.
So would you say you're unsympathetic? We would just fight until they see the light. That's what you're kind of saying, right?
I think actually there's a new generation of lawyers, many of you in this room, coming out and saying, we don't have to say, oh, the old model of practicing law, the billable hour, it doesn't even need to work anymore. Therefore, we have to go out of business. And what was the clip? Become a prostitute. I disagree. I think we're reinventing. I met the Docracy guys last night. I think they're one of the most exciting young companies. And I think that a decade ago, they would have simply had to get on the track and become slaves to a law firm until they became partners, right? I mean, that's what we all do. And instead, they started a dynamic company that is fundamentally disrupting the practice. Congratulations to them. There's going to be more companies like that. That's not a bad thing. That's a great thing all around. So.
Great.
Hey, Tim, can I take a crack at her?
Yes, actually. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. I think that was an excellent question, because that's one of the main not problem, but opportunities that we're trying to address. We have a program called Rocket Lawyer on Call, and we have lawyers all over the country who provide discounted fees, who help people mostly over the telephone, increasingly online using chat and video conference, and they're pioneers. They are innovators, people like Billy DeClerc in LA or Laura Drossman in Sacramento, and again, on and on all over the country, and also about 40 firms now in the UK. And so the answer to the question is, I know for certain you can go to Rocket Lawyer and you can look and see the profiles of these lawyers and what they're trying to do, but they are experimenting and we haven't totally figured it out. It's very experimental, but there is price transparency. They all publish their hourly fees. It's a requirement in our program that you have to publish your rates online, and then you have to provide the discount. And the really heartening thing about it is when you hear the customer, the client, and you play the recordings and you hear the clients talk about how much they love working with the lawyers who work that way, and just have tons and tons of that. So I'd be happy to talk to you later, and if you really are interested in it and want to study it more, I'd be happy to help you to do that.
Cool. So we're down to the last 15 minutes here, so we're going to go quick fire on both sides, but we're going to get through everybody. So Andrew Fong, go first and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm an attorney. I work at a big law firm. My question is whether if there's any lessons from like the insurance industry about how we value things. Like we have a price for D&O insurance for the risk of violating your fiduciary duty, and whether that sort of data plays in at all.
Great. Quick fire. So one person, anyone want to take this one?
Yeah, we look to the insurance industry a lot. The insurance industry, principal difference with legal, lawyers are not salesmen. Law firms don't have legions of commissioned sales reps out in the field whose sole job is to sell policies. Lawyers are service providers. They don't fill out some paperwork and send it off to the carrier. That's the big difference. The other big difference is at the carrier level, there are even slightly smaller legions of actuaries sitting there crunching numbers about probabilities and value. I do think that we need to move toward a model like that, and that's what Attorney Fee strives to become.
Great. Over here.
So I'm a recovering wild gotcha lawyer, and I had many deals with Simpson. And one of my favorite deals was with John Farrell, who was a banking partner at your firm. And in that deal, we were able, because we were both from large law firms, to be very efficient about how we solved the problem. And there was trust involved. And so the question is very simple. When you talk to managing partners of large law firms about these metrics, how do you convince them that you're actually going to keep the quality of service up, not just the price down? How are you doing that? What's your metrics around, I agreed with the distinction on some trademarks are harder to get than others. What's your quality of legal service argument that says that if they use your metrics, they will make the right people partner as opposed to the showcase partner?
If I could take that.
Sure, yeah. And it's a great question, I think, is like, are all these analytics just on faith, right?
The model for selling it internally to people is, for me, the Meiji Reformation, right? When Japan went from a feudal state to a modern entity very, very quickly, right? Not that it was perfect at all, I'm not endorsing it, but they never abandoned what they were. So when you sell analytics inside the law firm, which I have to do every day, right? I don't sell data, I sell history. I'm selling precedent. I'm selling deal precedent, I'm selling all kinds of things. And you don't talk about it, you just do it. So I help companies I know their docket sometimes better than they do, I know their deal structures better than they do, I know their portfolios, and it happens within seconds. So when the lawyers who are under massive pressure need a job done and need to know an answer about the risk involved, that's my insurance analog for this, you can tell them within seconds. That's enough. Just deliver, and try to deliver in ways that are way beyond what was possible before.
Great. Oliver, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Oliver Goodenough. I'm with Harvard's Berkman Center and also the Vermont Law School. And the question I want to put up is, what is the role for the public sector in all of this? The reason I ask this is that while there's a lot of dynamism and innovation going on in the private sector, and that's terrific, I actually see just as much going on in the public sector. In Vermont, for instance, the automation of the family court processes, which is very advanced at this point, very functional, lots of good uses, was instigated by the court system, not by any private sector. And indeed, given the public good aspects of many of these cost-saving measures, it may be that you see that the public sector is a better driver. We have Ross Miller on the next panel, which I'm going to be moderating, and he's from Nevada, and again is doing very innovative things with the Secretary of State's office there. So anyway, I'm not again the private sector in this, but I'm noting that no one has kind of taken on what is the role of the public sector in promoting these reforms.
It's a question. Where are you guys?
Let me address that. Casemaker, which is a Vermont state, was started originally by the State Bar of Ohio together with another attorney. So there are a whole slew of kind of private-public partnerships that can and should be created. We tried here in California to have automated court filing. I think we spent $400 million on it and then decided it was a complete failure, as opposed to buying an off-the-shelf system that would have cost a few $1,000,000. So there are, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Great. Well, I'll turn it over. Yes, sir. Introduce yourself.
Hi. My name is Dmitry Shubov. I'm the founder of Legal Match, and we've been operating in this industry for about 14 years. We've had price transparency with over 3 million customers in this time frame, and with all due respect to Charlie and the academic nature of this panel in terms of defining the problem as a price and a quantifying of or qualifying of legal services, I think it's not really true. It's as much not true as trying to quantify beauty in a dating site through one matrix or several metrics. It doesn't really work. I think the fundamental problem is really an informational one, which we're all touching upon. And the reason why the informational one has not been solved and is not being solved, was kind of touched upon, is because the legal industry is fighting against it. You have lawsuits on every single startup that tries to do something different or threats to do so. I can't tell you how many businesses have been shut down over this, and that the industry is basically fighting it. And when you're dealing with one company that tries to do something different, it's really hard without a lot of VC backing, which some people are able to get and some people are not. That said, I think there is a solution, and that's really the main reason why I want to stand up. It's a solution that I've been seeing for a long time and has not been addressed and will be addressed. It's just a question of time, and that is fee splitting. Once you create an environment where you can fee split, then you have entrepreneurs working with attorneys that have the flexibility in providing services in an interesting way, and you're not reliant on the industry accepting something, because entrepreneurs will always step in. At the time that we're able to allow fee splitting in the industry, that, I believe, is when it will really, really change and be competitive and accomplish all the goals that we all agree on. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
What do you guys say?
6 words.
Say what?
6 words.
6 words, go.
Mr. Gorbachev, break down this wall. I completely agree with the speaker.
Right. And so you think it's a problem? Like, really, we need to solve this regulation of lawyers question before any of the stuff we're working on can actually become...
The UK has already done it.
Sure.
And they did it out of respect for the fact that a 2007 study showed people were not getting access to the justice that they needed, that the legal help that they deserved as a citizen, even. And yeah, I completely agree.
And why do you think we're so slow here?
Well, it's not me. It was the study commissioned by Parliament.
Can I point one thing out? In 2005, our company was, for all practical purposes, tried to be put out of business in several bar associations, Texas being one of them. It took the FTC to come in and basically look at the problem and say, you know what? There's not been a single consumer complaint in the entire state of Texas out of hundreds of thousands of people that have been helped through Legal Match on the issue. So why are they trying to insist on it? And that's the problem. The regulations are designed to protect attorneys, not to service the customer, which is what they're really designed for. When that changes, the industry will change.
Great, thank you. So we were down to our last 5 minutes. We'll take the last 2. So yes, sir.
All right, James Peters from LegalZoom. I actually second what Dimitri was saying, and it sort of leads into a question that I had for Richard. When you were talking about reluctance of attorneys to have sort of value metrics posted about them, it seems to me sort of intuitive that would be an issue because attorneys have been prohibited from saying things about their past successes, things of that nature. So my question is sort of the sort of backlash that you're feeling from attorneys. I'm sure part of it is fear on their part. I'm wondering how much of it you think is just rooted in the regulation that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, you know.
That's an excellent question. I'm going to address that, but first I'd like to say a word to Dimitri's point.
Sure.
Respectfully, it's not that I disagree, but I think it needs to be rephrased. You're an attorney. Eddie's an attorney. I'm arguably an attorney. There are a million attorneys out there. There are a million people who can do fee splitting. The problem is not that fee splitting is not available. The problem, I just think we need to redefine it as capital formation structures, right? So I think that defines the problem a little bit more accurately, is how we're allowed to accumulate capital.
So let's hit this question.
Yes, this question. So, yeah, for sure, it's partly, backlash we've received and continue to receive is partly rooted in the restrictions that attorneys feel about themselves. I think it was in the 1970s, my history is wearing on me, but I think it's in the 1970s, a lot of the state bar associations were publishing recommended fee schedules, and the Department of Justice came down on them and said that's collusion, that's price fixing. So our approach has been, rather than to say this is what the price ought to be, is to say this is an accurate representation of what the price is, not ought, but is. It's not normative. And I think, big data is a buzzword that I'm not going to drop in this panel, but I think data is partly a solution to this. The reason attorneys are prohibited from saying things like, this is my track record, da-da-da-da-da, is it's like a data point in an ocean. And I think by aggregating data en masse, you can get around that and serve meaningful statistics. And I think realistically, the problem is much less attorneys having a sense of envy about what they're allowed to say versus what we're allowed to say. It's much more, to be really honest and echo Eddie's sentiment, I think it's fear.
All right, last comment.
My question,
introduce yourself
Colin Starger
first.
from the University of Baltimore. My question is whether in thinking about these metrics you have to take a categorically different approach to transactional law and litigation. If you think about them differently or use a kind of a flat notion.
Absolutely.
You do. And then how does the provision of pro bono services sort of fit into your thinking about pricing?
Well, go ahead.
Please.
Well, that was the way we did this before, and we still do it. Legal Foundation of Silicon Valley, I was there a few weeks ago. They are handling these types of cases, but it's very limited, and it's kind of a charitable contribution thing. So, and that's also how we deal with government and working with universities and things. On the access to capital issue, I think that's the elephant in the room. It's the most frustrating thing that we can't do fixed cost products or projects, right? It's insane to not have access to capital considering the complexity we're dealing with as lawyers. And I don't fear it. I love it. I want to do interesting things. I want to do things that no one else has done before. I just need your help to write the code to do those things.
Great. So any final comments? If not, I'd like...
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, all right. Go. Whatever. We're just here.
Yeah. No, I want to just quickly say, I actually respectfully don't think it's technology that's changing law. I think it's the idea that we can change law, and I know that sounds like a bumper sticker, but really, when I think about when LegalZoom was getting started, I can tell you this conference would have been attended by maybe 5 or 6 people, right? So just looking out and seeing all of you who've taken time out of your day and are interested in this and potentially even starting your own company or doing things to change the way that law is practiced, that's it. Technology will certainly help, but it's the commitment of everybody in this room and beyond that makes me really excited about what's coming next. LegalZoom works with a network of independent law firms, and they publish their prices and increasingly offer flat fee prices on, defined legal matters. And that's a good start. But I know that there's somebody right now working an idea that's much, much more disruptive. And that's really what I'm looking forward to.
Great. And with that, I'd like to thank all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.